Good day, everyone. This is Meredith Leon McCormick for World Bride Magazine. We're back with our series, and I wanted to start off our series this particular season with the facts. And I decided to invite the man behind all the information that we get on who's getting married, where they're getting married, how much they're spending, Mr. Shane McMurray, the owner, founder of The Wedding Report. Hey!
Hey, Meredith, thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. I know we're in a different time zone, so I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
So please tell us the name of the company one more time and the website, but at the same time, why did you start this company?
Yeah, so it's the wedding report and it's wedding.report. Pretty easy to find. And the reason I started it was I needed this information like back in early 2000s, so like 2002, 2003. I needed it because I had created a paper company. We were making paper from scratch, and I wanted to know how many people got married so I could sell my invitations and that sort of thing. And I couldn't find any information out there, and so I kind of went on this, being the data geek that I am, kind of went on this project to kind of figure out, okay, well, how many people get married in the U.S. and how much do they spend on wedding invitations? And then it turned into this project where I felt like, oh, well, this is an opportunity because there's nothing out there for the industry like this. Let's create something. And in fact, next month will be 20 years since I published my first research back in July of 2005, believe it or
Happy
not. So,
anniversary.
yeah, crazy. And yeah, so I just created some data on, how many people got married, how much did they spend on their wedding, and started tracking all the different pieces of the wedding, because that's really what, it's, everyone thinks that, okay, well, people spend 20, $30,000 on the wedding, but there's a lot of pieces that go into that. So I really wanted to understand what was the demand for the pieces. So there's that factor. Like not everyone buys everything, right? Like they don't. Not everyone hires a DJ. Not everyone buys a dress, unfortunately. But they do buy. What does that look like? And then how much do they spend? And then what does that total market look like? So from a business perspective, if you are a business, it's really about what does the total market look like? What is my opportunity here, right? And is there any gap that I could grow that opportunity? Where should I be pricing my products and services? What are the opportunities in luxury? What are the opportunities in average? What is the budget opportunities, right, that exist? So all those things. That was what I'm doing. That was the reason. That's it.
That's fantastic. You kind of answered questions one and two as to why your platform is so important. And the fact that you said you had your own business and you wanted to serve other people in the within the industry, you took the time to do the research. Now, many times people start businesses without knowing complete information about who they're servicing, what's out there, who the competitors are. And for anyone that has a business background, they always tell you it's either you do the research before or you're going to be the research during your
Yeah,
process of
yeah,
growing
yeah.
your business. So thank you for starting that because these are the facts. We were just having the conversation before we started this, that in the fashion world, which I come from over 30 years, the wedding industry was always a stepchild in the fashion world, and I don't think the research was thoroughly done, and I still don't think it's thoroughly done, and people know the value of the wedding industry. It is literally over $170 billion, globally. And
Yeah, it's a
so
big market.
America holds the biggest chunk of it because we do everything big and in surplus and everything else. So being that this is going to be your 20-year anniversary in July, you've seen change in the past 5, 10 years. What are the major shifts that you've seen in the industry that's impacting us today? Not only my business in publishing, but the new vendors that are coming out there. What do you think?
Yeah, so I would say short term in the past 5 years, obviously the pandemic, it was probably the biggest shift or change, which then sent businesses to start thinking about pandemic issues within their contracts, which they probably never thought about before that,
Hmm.
right? Like, how, oh, what happens if we have a pandemic? How do we deal with the contract part of that, right? Because we've already collected some funds. What do we do? How does that work out, right? So those, the fundamental legal parts of those shifts have already kind of played out. Um, the changes in the way that people think about, like previously thinking about where do we get married? How many people do we invite? All of those things kind of then started factoring in as we had closed, where there were markets where you couldn't meet with large people. I think people started thinking about, okay, well, after pandemic, right, let's start having bigger crowds, right? Let's start
Hmm.
inviting more people. So it was like, let's get together. And then after that, I think that's kind of settled back down and people are starting to kind of, all right, well, let's get back into the norm. I think most of the pandemic impact has kind of faded away and we're kind of getting back into the norm. Some of the long-term shifts that I've seen over the years is, well, for one, the marriage rate has been declining for a long time and it continues to decline. It's pretty flat right now. There's about 2 million people that get married a year, so that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
then
that's
as
2
the
million
new
people, excuse me. Is that 2 million people from what number before?
About 2.1, 2.2, right?
Mhm.
So it's just
Mhm.
kind of been here. The most we've ever had in the US was about 2.47 million. That was back in 1984. And the
Mm,
number has been declining ever since.
okay. Okay.
So, it goes up and down. It's come from the 2.4 in 1984. And I think in the early 2000s, we were somewhere around 2.2.
Mhm.
And then as we've moved through, we've kind of been fluctuating between 2.1 and 2.2 and then down into the 2 million. But right at the pandemic, we had 1.7 million people get married during 2020. So we lost about 300,000 weddings, roughly 300,000, 400,000. And then 2001 was 1.9, right at 2 million. And then it's been kind of hovering around there pretty much ever since. We did have a little bit of a bump in 2022, as you saw, right? Like that was all pent up demand. That was not growth. It was right above 2.2 million, right at that rate, but it's back down to right around 2 million. So even though the marriage rate has declined over the years, it's still been pretty steady. There's still 2 million people a year they get married. They still spend $60 billion a year in the U.S. on weddings alone, which is the biggest market in the entire world.
Absolutely.
China has more weddings in general. Like they have roughly 10 million people a year get married in China, but they don't spend that much money, right? So, a couple $1,000 here and there. Yes, there are people that spend a lot of money, as you know, even in this country. People spend millions of dollars on their wedding, and then there's people that spend hundreds of dollars on their wedding. So,
Right.
yeah. Uh, Marriage rate, and then I would say the other biggest change that I've seen and shift is that the couple themselves are paying more for the wedding than like when I first started, parents were contributing a lot.
Right.
Family was contributing a lot, as you know, right? Like back then, right? But now it seems like the couples, at least 70% of couples are paying 100% of the wedding.
Yes.
And then parents contribute, family contributes, that sort of
Right.
thing. So,
Yeah. Those are big shifts in the industry economically, but that's one of the very reasons why World Bride came into existence because it goes beyond just the American culture and how we do things. I personally believe the reason why there has been a steady decline in it is the fact that people have shifted from the goal to be married and spiritual reasons that there was a time you would never think about having a baby before you got married.
yeah, for sure.
So all of these factors, and so with people, more and more people living together, more and more people already starting their families and not feeling that marriage is necessary, I feel that contributes to it as well. So when I go outside of this country and I go to a place like the Middle East or Latin America and parts of Europe where spirituality, religion, I should say religion is important, so marriage is still their priority, whereas
Yeah.
here in America, America, we could live together, shack forever, and nobody can say
Yeah,
nothing to you. I
yeah,
think that's a shift to it. And then now, my assistants and my associates will tell me, that they can't afford to get married, even if they could. They have way too much to lose because of the divorce rate, and nobody wants to lose half of what they made. So these
yeah.
are contributing factors as to, in my personal belief, why people are not married. But you have the statistics and the numbers which back these things up. So it's not just random things that we're pulling out of the air, which is really important. Which is the reason why I feel your platform is so important, that you have the stats to prove it, and where marriage and weddings and people are spending. And I agree with you. Couples are spending more and more on their own instead of their parents. Because even when my daughter got married, her and her fiance, they already had their big chunk of money. Me and his parents were just added on of as to what we wanted to make it grand. Other than that, they couldn't care less, and that's the nice thing. It's nice about it. Now it's not as much of a family contribution like the My Fat Greek Wedding. It was like the family was taken. That's one of my
Yeah,
favorite movies,
yeah, yeah. Great movie. Yeah.
So the
There's actually a project out of the University of Virginia. It's called the National Marriage Project. They
Mhm,
have some really good research around like the dynamics of marriage and why people aren't getting married or why they were getting married over multiple years. Like I think they published their first research in 2008 or 2009.
mhm,
And then they had the most recent one was 2022. And I was actually looking at that around like, okay, well, if we're in the largest population growth in our history, right? Like with the millennial generation, like what does Gen Z look like? So
mhm,
if we have this huge population, why aren't the numbers of marriage going up? And it's like you said, people are living together, they don't, they can't afford to get married or whatever. What does Gen Z look like? Is that going to grow? Is it going to go down? And if
mhm,
you start reading through there and looking at the younger generation, they see less value in marriage than the
mhm,
millennial generation. So
mhm.
I'm not sure where we're going to be in the next decade. Where will we be in the marriage rate? We probably will
Right.
be lower. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. I would say if you are in this business, figure out a way to diversify into other events.
And
Might
and
be
I noticed that too. I'm glad you said that, because I noticed that too. A lot of the luxury planners that I'm working with, the Joanne Grigolis and Fabrice Orlando and all of them, they don't just do weddings. They do events. They do major events,
yes,
corporate events. They do soirees, parties, birthday parties, and
yeah.
anniversaries and things like that to supplement their income, so they don't totally depend on the wedding industry. Which leads me into this big thing that's over American, and not just Americans, but the world, the situation with the tariffs. How do you think it's going to impact us?
Well, I mean, it's already impacted a lot of companies already. I mean, even if you're not getting goods from China, you're already paying a 10% tariff, and therefore, sure, you might have been paying more.
Oh my God,
You're
sorry.
getting stuff from China. You're paying what is it, like 35% now or something like that, and then next month, I mean, that's the 90-day point, so we don't know what's going to happen. So in general, you're already paying 10% more if you're buying products or you're getting anything from outside the country.
Right.
um, and that you've got to you either, I mean, so from a retail perspective, that doesn't translate directly 10%, right? Like if you're paying 10% more on something, that might translate to, like 3, 4, 5% more on the retail side of the business. It really depends on what your margins are, right? So, and as you know, fashion margins are pretty slim in some cases, right?
Mhm.
So depending on what part of the business you're in, you might be impacted more than others. And then depending on where we're going to be next month when the 90 days runs out,
Yes.
those folks that are getting stuff from China, which I believe 90% of most dresses are produced in China as it
Yes.
stands today, roughly. Um, they're going to have to figure out different routes. And the problem is that you can't just change this stuff overnight or even within a month. It's taken years to
Yep.
build these supply chain routes
Yep.
and to do these other things. So the industry is going to have to figure out other ways to make this work.
And I
So
know a couple of people that are already starting to have their factories come to New Jersey, out there. And so there's talks in it already as far as the fashion industry, but also it touches upon the whole sustainability issue that we have anyway. Because in my opinion, again, I think the wedding industry is one of the most wasteful industries because
for
you
sure.
a fortune a fortune on
Yeah,
an event that happens a day to maybe a week,
yeah,
depending on what's your cultural background. And you spend a year planning it and a year's salary or half a year's salary for some, the average American, to make this one day happen. And so there's so much we have to take a look at to make our industry work and looked on as an asset to our communities the way it used to be. You
yeah.
used to go to your baker, and he was baking your bread, and you go to him to get your wedding cake. Now everything is so astronomical and everybody is a one man. This is what we do. Everything is singular. I only do stationery. I only do this. I only do that. There's no more one big conglomerate of where you can go to the big place and get everything. It's not a one-stop shop anymore. So we're gonna have to figure this out quickly. And this is one of the reasons why I tell people if you don't start collaborating with your colleagues, you're going to go out of business. It's all about collaboration. So that to me is really important. So thank you so much for explaining the whole tariff thing, because I know that's a big concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Big,
now
big concern.
your platform, what kind of tools do you have that can help people navigate their way as they prepare for all these challenges?
So as a business, I mean, the thing that we provide is how the market's changed over time. So if like let's say you're in New York and you want to see how the market's changed over time, and you can see where it goes. We try to forecast out about 2 to 3 years, so you can kind of see where the market is going. But we also provide the history, so you can kind of see where it's been and how things have changed over time. The
Right.
other thing that we provide is there's really three things or three ingredients I feel like this is the most important thing. One is how big is the market? And that's how many people get married in my market, right? What does that look like? Is it 1,000 people? Is it 100,000 people? What does that look like? The second thing is what am I selling and what do people spend in a variety of different ways? But what do people spend on the thing I'm selling? So let's say it's a dress. What do I spend on a dress? What's the average spent on a dress? Well, we also look at a couple of different spending points because we need to understand where the market is. So we look at average, which is essentially all the samples summed up and then divided, right, by the number. We look at the median, which is all the samples, line them up 0 to 1 or 0 to 100, and then you get the middle. So, what is the median spend? Because that tells you how many people in the market spend above or below. So it's 50% below, 50% above, right? That number, that median number. And then we also do it in a way that we try to help what we call spending distribution, but it's really different buckets of spending. So you can kind of see what the luxury market looks like, what the DIY budget market looks like, what the average market looks like. Most of the wedding industries, Meredith, focuses on the luxury side of the
Yes.
business, right? Everyone thinks that's where the money is. Yes, there's money to be made there, but it's a lot of work to maintain that luxury space. The opportunity really is in that just below the average
Yep.
area. There is a lot of market. That's where the market mostly is just
Yep.
below the average, right? And that's where everything is. So, for example, if you look at the average spending it right now for a wedding in the US, it's $31,000, right?
Mhm.
But only 16% of all weddings spend above $30,000. That means that the average is just above and in that 16%. So that means that literally 84% of all weddings spend below $30,000, right? There's a huge amount of market opportunity in that space right there. So what we're trying to help you understand. And the other part of it, the last ingredient is the demand for the product or service that you sell. So, for example, if I sell wedding invitations, well, how many people buy wedding invitations?
Right.
We know that even if there's 1,000 people to get married, 1,000 people aren't buying wedding invitations. Well, how many is that? What does that look like? Okay, well, let's say it's 500 of the 1,000 buy wedding invitations. Okay, I know that is my true market right there. That is the market. But is there opportunity above that to actually capture some of that additional market where
Right,
people aren't buying invitations? Well, why aren't they buying invitations,
right,
right? And that's where you have an opportunity to look at, okay, well, great. Here's the average. I can build here. There's a percentage of the market that doesn't buy this thing. Can I get some of that market as well
right,
as capture some of this market? Because everybody's focused. Remember, most everybody in this industry is focused on the luxury part of the market, which is that much. And there's huge opportunity over here. You should be focusing on this. Anyway, that's really what the platform tries to help you understand. Even though this is a creative business, that's what the data is really trying to help you understand. Where, how much you should be pricing, what does that market opportunity look like? Is there a market for me to grow? And then
right,
if you do find it, okay, well, what other markets can I go duplicate this in, right? Can I take this from Tucson? I'm in Tucson, Arizona. So can I take this to Phoenix? Can
right.
I take this to Flagstaff, right? And duplicate this. So yeah, that's what we're
That's
trying to help.
brilliant. You literally answered three of my questions just with that statement. So I can't thank you enough. I literally want to invite you to New York and do a panel just on these new businesses and old businesses because old businesses that have been there or iconic businesses are trying to find their way with the flood of newcomers that are coming in.
Yeah.
And I feel like there is something missing and I don't think people are doing the numbers. And I also believe that us as media, we can't keep fluffing it up and only saying that it's only luxury is what they should be targeting because there's a limited few that are actually doing it,
Yep.
that can even afford to do it or even thinking that they're not. They need other people's help. So there's just so much conversation. So I want to thank you so much for this opportunity and this information. I can't wait to share it with our readers and our viewers. And it'll also help our readers the actual end users to understand that we're not just randomly giving them information. These are tested and founded and facts and it's packaged nicely, but it's not to scare people, but it's to help them make wise decisions.
Right.
Thank you.
So for your readers,
Mhm.
if they're getting married, we provide a tool called the Wedding Cost Estimator, and it's really to help them understand how much you're going to spend on your wedding. And it's not to scare them, like you said. It's really to help get them in a balanced place to go, okay, if I'm going to have 300 people at my wedding and I'm going to
Yeah.
buy all these things and I'm going to do all this stuff, it's going to impact how much you're going to spend. You're going to spend a lot of money on your wedding. So the tool is to we ask them about 10 different questions. Based on the questions, we basically generate an estimate that shows
Mhm.
them you're going to probably spend about this much. So
Fantastic. So
yeah,
I'm going to make sure that we get that link and put it in the story that I'm going to write as well as the with that worked with the video and share it with our readers because I think that's going to be really important to them, especially in these economic uncertain times, that we're living in.
yeah,
So
thank you.
again, give us your website and thank you so much.
Yeah, it's wedding.report.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
everyone, thank you. This was Shane. This is Shane. He actually is so well versed in our industry, and we want to encourage you to click on the link that we're going to share with you and follow his information. It's very thoroughly researched, and we want to thank you for tuning in. And until the next time, ciao, Bella.